Hello. Now, while I've been working on this neck through Telecaster, not this, the other one, I've also been working on this one. I had recorded a video explaining some of the ways in which this was going to be different, using a different top and so on, but I somehow deleted that video, so this is just me introducing the project to you. I'm not going to record every aspect of this build, which is still not complete at the moment. I'm only going to document the parts of the build that are different from the first neck through Telecaster. Everything else is the same. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's another situation where something going wrong, I think, is leading to something going really right. So this is the second of those two Telecasters. Now, due to a problem with my bandsaw blade being quite dull, because of an episode not that long ago where I kind of loaned it to someone who wanted to chop up some wood, and it was wet wood and it didn't go well, and now my bandsaw blade's really dull. So, gonna have to sharpen it or replace it, but the upshot is I used it anyway and it didn't go well, plus the adjustment wasn't quite right. The adjustment's better now. Long story short, I wrecked the through neck, the neck that runs through the body for the neck through construction. But I managed to salvage part of it long enough to make a neck, but not that kind of neck. Just a, I was going to say normal neck. There is no normal neck, but you know, a neck that has a tenon that goes into the body rather than a through neck. So what I decided to do is replace the neck that was running through the body, and which was the same height as the body, with a piece of Tasmanian Blackwood, which is a really lovely wood. You can kind of see it there. It's got a really good grain, doesn't it? Nice contrasty grain. You may recall that the top of this guitar is also going to be made from Tasmanian Blackwood. A really nice book-matched piece that I put together. So now there will be a stripe, banging things around in the workshop, there will be a stripe of Tasmanian Blackwood on the back, and you'll be able to see it on the end too, which is really nice. And I will just make a really long pocket, like there-ish, and glue the neck in, which works, doesn't it? And I won't actually use that fretboard. It has a wee hole in it. Now, it may look like that's not long enough because I ran out of neck there. It is long enough because I will be using a scarf joint when back angling the headstock. Now, normally with a scarf joint, of course, you cut a piece of wood off the end, then flip that piece of wood over. But the truth is, you don't have to flip that piece of wood over and glue it on. You can stick on any piece of wood you like. So I'm going to put on another piece of Tasmanian Blackwood. It'd be nice to have that wood reoccurring down at the other end of the guitar. That'll look lovely. So, out of that little mishap came new experience. I haven't made... Well, actually, I have made a neck a bit like this. This is a bit like the neck that I'm putting into the Mockingbird. And when, I'm not sure the order in which these videos are going to be released, you might have seen that already. But it's practice. And I think it's going to look really good. So, my next step will be to just plane the faces of these, which I will glue together. They're not quite right yet. There's a bit of a gap there. So I'll make sure they're all planed nice and straight. Glue the body together. Cut it out using the template, probably. Yes, I'll probably use the template to do that. Don't have to, but I probably will. And then I will set about routing out the neck pocket. I have clamped down here what is the centerpiece of the guitar body. And don't worry about that little chip there. That sticks out the end of the body. That will be cut off. So what I'm going to do to that centerpiece is cut the pocket for the neck to sit. My worry, though, was that I don't have a disc sander. And a disc sander is probably what I would ideally have used to make sure that the end of that piece of wood was perfectly flat. I don't have a table circular saw, which would have helped there too, so I would have used a sander, but I don't have that either. I've just got a handheld orbital sander. So to make sure that the end of the pocket matches the end of the piece of wood that's going into the pocket, what I've done is I've clamped the neck piece onto the centerpiece, and I'm using my router with the flush trim router bit to cut the beginning of the pocket so that the cut matches perfectly the contour of the edge of the piece of wood, so that I know it will indeed fit. So all I need to do now is cut that down to the right depth, which I've marked there, a line beyond which I must not transgress. And then once I've got the end cut, it's much safer to go ahead and cut the rest out. So that's what I'm doing just now. This seems to be going according to plan. It's a very messy endeavour, as you can see. So periodically I will have to stop and use my workshop vacuum just to clean up what I'm doing before I continue. So what is now the neck pocket, of course, wasn't much of a pocket originally because this wasn't glued together. It was just a thinner part of the centerpiece. But now that the wings are glued on, which I've just done overnight, it's a perfectly fitting pocket. It was a little too perfect at first in that I could get this in, but I had to really push it in very hard. And you don't quite want that because you need to allow some room for glue in there. Otherwise you won't have much of a joint. So it is now just the right size for my liking. Nice and snug, and it passes the lift test in that you can lift this without any glue. If you shook it around it would come out, but you know, don't do that. So I'm not going to glue the neck in just yet. I'll wait until after I've done the scarf joint and attached the headstock. I'm going to shape the body first of all. I'll get the template out and I will clamp it down over the body and then use my router to just cut off the excess parts of the body and trim it down to the shape of the template. So let's get on to that. Done. What I did in the end, after the first pass with the short router bit, which is still sitting around here somewhere, I think, maybe, is I swapped out that bit for a very long one, the one that actually did the damage to my thumb, just to make it quicker, really, so that the blade, the bit with its blades, could cut the full height of the body all in one pass. So that is done. I didn't do those parts there. What they look like will depend on how I treat that neck piece, which I suppose I should turn to next, namely by doing the scarf joint and then routing the truss rod channel before I cut the neck to shape. So, on to that.